Okay, good afternoon to all of you. In continuation of the previous online class, today we will see how to configure the IPv6 in the PC as well as the routers. And then we will learn about the next topic, how to secure the devices using the SSH protocol. Okay. Now, in the last class, you learned the IP addressing and how the addresses are assigned to the end devices as well as the routers. Now today we'll practically see how can we configure them. Now in the last class you learned about the different types of IPv6 addresses. You have learned about the unicast address, multicast address and anycast address. Now, in the unicast itself, you have different types of addresses. You have global unicast address, then you have link local address, then unique local address, loopback address, right? So now we'll see how these addresses can be configured. So now I'm going to place a PC in the workspace. Now, if you click on this PC, I hope you all know how to take the IP address. Yes, so you go to the desktop, and if you click on IP configuration, you can see the IPv4 address section and then the IPv6 address. Now here, if you look at the IPv6 configuration section, you can see that already one IPv6 address is automatically configured. I did not configure, as by default it is already there. Now, in the last class, you learned about one address called as link local address. Now, how this link local address is created is with the help of the MAC address. Now, how many of you know the MAC address, or how many bits are used to represent the MAC address? Can you give in the chat box how many bits are used for representing a MAC address? Can I get your answers in the chat box? How many bits are used to represent a MAC address? Can you tell me what command will you type in the command prompt to see the MAC address? Okay. Pavana, you have given the right answer. It is 48 bits. Can you tell me the command to see the MAC address? You give the get MAC. Okay. Any other command? In the packet tracer, which command can you use to see the MAC address? Show MAC address table, that you see the mapping that is used in the switch. Okay, so show MAC address is used in the switch. Now you have learned a command called IP config. Okay, so now I'm going to give the command IP config, and you can see that there are no IPv4 addresses configured, and you see only a link local address, but no MAC addresses are mentioned here. So to see the MAC address, again, you have already learned the command IP config /all. Okay, so this command will get you the physical address, or otherwise called as the MAC address. So now this PC's MAC address is this. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how this 48 bits of this MAC address is now. Initially it is how many bits? 48 bits of the MAC address. Now this has to be changed to a 64 bits in order to get this link local address. Okay, now we are going to learn how did we arrive at this link local address. Now you already know that for a link local address, the address should always start with FE80. Okay, that means the first 10 bits are fixed in the link local address. So any address that starts with this is considered to be a link local address. Now, how do we combine these two? So you take the MAC address and then you have to insert FE. Okay, in the last class, ma'am explained how to do this conversion. So you split this 48 bits as 24 bits. Okay, you separate them and you insert this FFFE. Okay, so now I'm going to insert FFFE, and this is what I'm getting. Okay, so now how many bits I have added? By adding FFFE, how many bits are now added? Can you tell me? How many binary bits have I added? FFFE. Each hex digit is how many binary bits? Suppose if I expand F, how will I write? F1111. Okay, so each hex digit is how many bits? 4 bits. Okay, so now I have added 4 hex bits, therefore 48 has now plus 16 bits will give me how many bits? Totally 64 bits. Okay, and the next step is after we insert this FFFE, we have to flip the 7th bit. Okay, so 7th bit have to be flipped. Now, which is the 7th bit? Now, I'm going to expand this first hex digit. Okay, so if I expand this, this is what will you will get the binary expansion of the first hex digit. Okay, so this I have expanded. Now, which is the 7th bit? This is the 4 bits, 5, 6, and 7. So this 7th bit I'm going to flip. So 0 will become 1. Now, what is the decimal equivalent of this hextet now? 0. Can you tell me the decimal equivalent of this hextet? Can you type in the chat box? Yes, 0240. Okay. Now, can you apply the 2 rules that were taught in the last class? What is the first rule? You have to, what is the first rule? You can omit the leading zeros, right? So here we have a leading 0. So I'm going to omit this 0. Okay. Now I'm going to take these 3 and I'm going to replace here. Okay. Now this is the 64 bits which I'm going to add with the FFFE. Okay. Now if you look here, we have got the answer of this link local address. Okay, so you can check this address that we have got along with what we got. Okay, so you can see, can you see the address? This address and what we have found is correct. Okay, so this is how the link local address is computed. Okay, now so from the link MAC address, we have got the link local address. So now I'm going to connect one more PC and I'm going to show you how to ping from one device to another device. So this PC also has an IPv6 address that is received from the MAC address. So how do you ping? You go to the command prompt and give as usual. You give ping and then the IP address of the next PC. And you can see that you're getting the reply. So without configuring any unicast address, with the help of the link local address itself, I'm able to communicate. But one restriction is this link local address can be used only within this link. Suppose if I have to cross this PC and connect elsewhere, then that address will not work. Okay, so in a single link from left to right alone, you can do the, you can test the connectivity of the device using this link local address. Now, if you have to connect with any other device, then what should be used? Okay, so now I'm going to remove this PC. I'm going to remove this PC and I'm going to add a router. Now, when you do the IPv6 addressing in the packet tracer, you have to remember you should not use this PT router, which is a very generic router, because this router doesn't have the IPv6 capability. Okay, so you have to go for any other higher end router. So I'm going to use the 29 double one router. So now I'm going to connect this PC directly with this router using the crossover cable. Now, does this router also has a link local address? It should have. Okay, so we'll check whether is the router interface, gigabit Ethernet interface is having the link local address. So you can click on the CLI and the very first command you have to give is no. Then you can give enable. And then using the show command, you can see what is the link local address of this interface. Okay, you have learned many show commands. Now, when you use the IPv6 addressing, the command is you have to give show IPv6 interface brief. Okay, you can make a note of this command. This is one of the troubleshooting command. In V4, you just you will give as IP interface brief. But in IPv6, you have to type as IPv6. Okay. So now if you give the show IPv6 addresses, you can see that, okay, gigabit Ethernet, you can see that no addresses as of now is assigned. The reason is by default, this router will understand only V4 addressing. Okay. Therefore, it is not showing me any IP address. It's not showing me any addresses. Now, to make this router to understand V6 addressing, the very first command which you should configure is IPv6 unicast routing. Okay, so this command will enable the router to process IPv6 addresses. Okay, so this is the very first command you should give if a router should understand IPv6 addressing. Got it? So now, once you give this IPv6 unicast outing, now we'll check the same command show IP in brief. Okay. Okay, so the address is still not. Okay, one more command we have to give. We have to enable this interface also for IPv6. So we'll enable that IPv6. Enabling, we'll do it like this. So we'll take the gigabit Ethernet interface and then we'll enable IPv6 enable. Next command. Okay, so this gigabit Ethernet interface should be enabled with IPv6. So now I have enabled it. Now let me use the same command to see. Now can you see the link local address? I did not set any address. I have just enabled that interface to support IPv6. As soon as this command is configured, you can see that the link local address is set. Okay, now how did it come? From the MAC address. So 64 bits from the MAC address, and you can see that it is FE800. Okay, now let me copy this address just to ping and check whether it is working from the PC. And one more thing I have to do. What command will you give to make this interface active? Can you give in the chat box what command will you give to make this interface active? Now it is red in color. How do you make it green? How do you make it the interface active or make it up? What command should be given? Students, you can give your answers. Yes, very good. No shutdown. Okay. So as soon as I give no shutdown, the interface has changed to up. That means it has become active. So let me go to the PC. Let me take the command prompt and I'm going to ping. I'm going to check whether the connectivity with the router is there. Okay. So you can see that I'm getting the reply. Okay. Now, can I ping from PC? I'm able to ping to the router. Can I ping from the router to the PC, that also I can do. So let me take the IP address, IPv6 address of the PC, and I'll type here the address, and I'm going to get the interface through which the ping has to be sent. Okay, so I have to give the full name. Okay, so instead of GIG, you have to type okay. Start pinging. Okay, there is one more extra zero here. That's why. Okay, I'll come back to this little later. Okay. Okay, now I'm getting the reply. You should not give in the same line. First you give ping and then the IPv6 address, then it will ask you what is the output interface. Then you give the interface name. Okay, so you should not give in the same line. You have to give in the separate line. Okay, so now you can see that the success rate is 100%. So now we are able to ping from the PC to the router and from the router to the PC. Now, what if I have, as of now, I have used only the link local address for pinging. Now, suppose if I bring in a device in between this, I'm going to bring a switch here. Okay, I'm going to bring a switch and I'm going to connect it through the straight through cable. Now, will my link local address work? As I've already said, link local address will work only between that link. Okay, so that means from this PC to this switch or from this switch to router. From PC to router, it will not work. Link local address will not work. So there you have to go manually, you have to configure the IP address, or you can go for the next method. So there are last class you learned about the different methods. Manually you can configure, or using the stateless, the address auto configuration using Slack, you can configure the address, or using the DHCP v6 server, you can configure the IP address. Okay, so now I'll explain the auto configuration, that is stateless auto configuration for these devices. Okay, now how do we configure this? So we have already enabled this router. So how do you know what all configuration you have already done? You can give the show running configuration and you can see what all we have done so far. So IPv6 unicast routing is configured, and then we have enabled the IPv6 only for the gigabit Ethernet interface 0/0. Okay, now we will configure the IP address. Okay, so the command is config t IPv6 address. Can give the command auto config. Sorry, I have to first select the interface. For which interface are we setting the IP address? So gigabit Ethernet interface 0/0, and then I'm going to give the auto config IPv6 address auto config command. Now we'll come back to the PC. Can you see the automatic here? So earlier it is static. Now we are going to use the Slack. Automatically, we are going to get the IP address from the MAC address. So I'm going to click automatic. So we have set the auto config. That means in the address you have learned first 64 bits is the prefix and the next 64 bits it's the MAC address, right? So for the this last 64 bits, that is the subnet ID, it will take from the MAC address. So we will configure the network ID for the LAN. Okay, so now let me take for this LAN the address, say 2001 AA double colon /64 network. Okay, so I've written a very compact address for this LAN, and we'll add a few more LANs after this. Okay, now let me configure this address. Config T IPv6 2001 colon AA double colon 1. Okay, so 1 is going to be the that gigabit Ethernet interface address. /64 is the prefix. I'm going to tell prefix as this, and I'm going to give enter. Sorry, I have missed the word address. Interface GIG 0/0 IPv6 address 2001 double colon A1/64, and I give no shutdown. Now I'll come back to this IPv6 and I'm going to click automatic. You can see that the network address 2001A have arrived automatically, and the first 64 bits are taken from this. Okay, what we configured on the router interface, and the next 64 bits you can see it is taken from the MAC address. Okay, so here you can see this 64 bits are taken from the MAC address, that is the link local address, and the first 64 are taken from what we configured in the router. Okay, so this is the network address. So this we call it as the Slack or stateless address auto configuration. There is another way of configuring also. Just now I have written only this much. In one more way also you can configure. I'll show you that method also. So for that method, let me take, I'll create one more LAN. So for the this side, right side LAN, I'm going to use the next method of configuration. So let me take interface GIG 0/1, and I'm going to use the another method of configuration. So IPv6 address. So for the right side LAN, I'm going to use this address 2002 DB /64. This is the address that I'm going to use. So 2002 BB /1/64, then EUI-64. Okay, so now this is called as extended unique identifier. Okay, so this is another way of configuration for the interface, and I'm giving no shutdown. Now let me come back to the PC and I'll click automatic, and you can see that how I have received the address. Okay, 2002 DB, then followed by the 64-bit of the MAC address. Okay, so in two ways you can configure the Slack, either through this method or using this EUI-64. So in the theory class, ma'am explained how this EUI bit is generated, right? So this is the command for configuring the Slack. Okay, so in this case, you need not manually configure for the PCs. Once the router interface is configured, using this automatic, we can get the network address from the router, and then the remaining 64 bits are taken from the link local address. Now, how do we configure manually? Manually, if you're going to configure, if you're not going to go for the Slack, what you can do is you can click the static and you can manually type. So this is the manual configuration where you have to manually type the addresses. Suppose if you want to give an address like this, and you can give. So this way also the addresses can be assigned. So this is the manual configuration. And you can see that the address what we configured is now set here. So 2002, you can see in the pop-up, the number which I just now typed manually, that is set for the fast Ethernet interface FA0. So manually you can do, or you can use it, use the Slack. The next method of configuration is using the DHCP server. So I'll add one server to this existing LAN, and I'll show the answer, how it works. So you can take the server. You have already learned the DHCP server for IPv4. The same way we have to do. So initially, the first step is you have to assign the IP address for the server. So for the right side LAN, what address we used? Sorry, not here. Yes, here. 2002:BB /, and then you can use any of the usable IP addresses. So for the last 64 bits, you can use any. So let me give 100, and then I'm going to give the mask as 64. And let me take, so for the router interface, I use the address DB /1, and DNS server. If you want, you can set, otherwise we can leave. So now I have manually set the IP address for the server. Now let me go to the services, and you can go, can you see DHCP v6? Click on that, and you have to, first step is you have to enable that service on. And then we'll create the pool. So let me give LAN, say LAN 2 as the name, DNS server. Okay, let me give some address, BB /, say 200 or 101, and domain name, what name you want to give. So we'll give the name cisco.com, and let me save the pool. After we create the pool, we'll create the prefixes for that pool. So pool of addresses we have to assign. So 2002 BB Say from 200 onwards, I want to give assign the addresses. So give 64, and how much time you want these addresses to be assigned for. So let me give some address seconds and then save. So now we have set the pool with the addresses. So the addresses should start from 200. So the last 64 bits is 200. So I'll close it. Let me come back to this PC. Can you see now the address have changed to 200? No, this only MAC address is taken. Okay, what I'll do is I have to enable this auto config, which is set in this interface. Okay, but it is taking the address from the router and not from the DHCP server. Okay, so okay, now you can see the difference. Can you see? This address is not the link local address that we had seen earlier. Okay, so once it learned that there is a DHCP server providing the IP addresses, it ignored the address that it has auto configured, and it has taken it from the DHCP server. So you can see how automatic addresses are received from the DHCP server and not from the Slack. So you can see this addresses. We said from 200, any address can be given. So this address is received. So have everybody have understood how the configuration is done manually and using Slack and using a DHCP v6 server. Can you give your response whether you have understood this? So any troubleshooting commands that you use should have the word as IPv6. Say, for example, if you want to see the routing table, you have to give show IPv6 route. Only then you can see the routing table of V6. So here you can see that two networks are directly connected. AA network, 2001 AA network, 2002 BB network. And then we have other link local address. Okay. So these addresses you can see. And if you want to see show IP V6 interface brief, you can see what are the interfaces are up or down. Okay, if it is administratively down, you can see this. Whether it is up and functioning, you can note. So here you can see addresses. Whereas if you take IPv4 addressing, an interface can have only a single IP address, but in V6, it can have multiple V6 addresses. Okay, so here it has a link local address, and also it has a manually configured address. And here you can see how the address was received through using the EUI bit 64. Okay, so you see the difference of this one and this. If you don't use EUI bit, you see an address like this. Okay, so you can see the difference how the address is obtained. So in the first method, how you configure, the same thing has configured on the router interface. Exactly same what we typed. But in the next case, the 64 bits are taken from the link local address. The first 64 is what we have given. Now this address was received using the Slack. And using the state, now this DHCP we use V6 server, when we use, we call it as a stateful addressing. Call this as a stateful addressing. So when you go through the materials, you can understand what are the different messages are being sent. The router solicitation message, router advertisement messages that gets transferred for fetching the IP addresses. You can theoretically see, and also using the simulation mode, you can see. Okay, so here if you capture the packets, you can see what all messages are sent. Okay, that you can see. Now, so with this, I'll stop the IPv6 addressing. I'll go to the next topic, that is the SSH protocol. Okay, so you have already learned how to secure the devices using the password, that is the console password, the telnet VTY password you have learned, and how to use the console cable also you have studied. Now, today, for the last chapter in your course, talks about the SSH protocol. That is SSH. You have learned in the theory class also, secure shell protocol. Now, to show the configuration, let me draw a very simple topology with PC, a switch, and router. Now, the first step which you have to configure in the router is the device name. So certain configurations are mandatory too for the SSH protocol. So the first step is to change the device name. Can you tell how to change this device name? Can you tell me what command is used for changing this device name? You have already learned and you have done in the lab class. Can you give in the chat box the answer? How do you change the device name? Yes, very good. So you give the host name. So let me give the name RTA. Okay, router A. Okay, what's the mistake here? I forgot to give the config T command. Okay. Now the next method is next command that you have to give is for the SSH, a domain name have to be set. Okay, so for this network, a domain name have to be configured. Now in the routers, by default, the DNS lookup will be enabled. Okay, so the first step, you can disable that domain lookup by giving the command no IP domain name hyphen lookup. Now this is to disable the DNS lookup process. Okay, so we'll disable this and we will set the domain name. So the name of this network, let's take CSE.com. Okay, so IP domain name CSE.com. Then I want to set the password, security password for this device. And I want to say how many characters this length of this password should be. So to specify the size of the password, the command is security password, minimum length, say, let me say 10 characters. Normally the passwords are kept as 8 characters. Let me interface. I think I have to choose the interface and give. So face 0/0. Security. It's saying unrecognized command. Okay, the password length, I'll confirm and tell you. Now, let me proceed. I'll just set the username and password. Okay, so let me set the username as say Cisco and secret any password. Okay. Okay, now I have set the username and password for this device. Okay, so the first step is you have to create the domain name. You have to create the device name, then the domain name, and then I have set the username and password. Next step is we have to create the encryption key. So SSH makes use of, as you all know, SSH encrypts the data and it sends. So we have to create the encryption key. So we'll use the RSA algorithm for encrypting. So crypto key generate RSA. And it says how many bits is needed for generating the key. I'm going to give, say, 1020 for encrypting the data. Okay. So now I've created the key. Now we'll enable the SSH on the BTY line. So as usual, we'll go to the line BTY, say 0 to 4. So now you can see here SSH is enabled. Why did it enable? Because we have already created a key using the RSA algorithm. Then the next command is transport input SSH. And then to make this protocol active, we'll give the command login. The password is sent. Department. I'm creating the device password as. Okay. Now we will write this to the flash RAM, NB RAM, using this command, say do write. So whatever we have done so far is now entered into the NB RAM. Now let me go to the yeah, one more thing is left. We have to set the IP address for the interface. So let me add one address, say 192.16.10.1, 255.255.255.0, and we'll give no shutdown. So now the address is set. We'll come back to the PC. We'll set the IP address for the PC. Say 10.2. Here I've given 16. Okay. Now I'll go to the command prompt. I'll give SSH -L. And then what is the username I gave? What username did I give? Do you remember what username I gave in the router? How do we check? You can give show running configuration and you can say okay, Cisco is the username I gave. Okay, so Cisco and then the IP address 16.1.1. So it should connect remote house, proceed connect. Okay, so the address is 10.1. Okay, so now I gave a wrong address. It should be 10.1. So now it is asking me for the password. What password did I give? I gave any password. And so now I'm able to enter. So for the password for the device, I gave department as the password. So now I'm able to access the router's CLI. So now I'm able to access the IOS of the router from the PC using this SSH protocol. Okay, so this is the way you configure the SSH. So there are a few more commands also for enhancing this further. Suppose if you want to stop the DOS attack, there is a command which you can configure on the router to block anybody logging in repeatedly. Say, for example, you can use the command login block for, you want to block them, say for 3 minutes, then you can give 180 seconds attempt. If anybody attempts the 4th time within, say, for example, 120 seconds. That means if for within 2 minutes, if somebody is trying to access 4 times, you can block certain users. Okay, so this command is mainly used for stopping the DOS attack. So you can learn this command: login, block the person who's trying for the 4th time within this 120 seconds, stop them for 180 seconds. And suppose if the user is idle for some time, they can be, you can exit from the prompt. So for that also there is one command, exit timeout. You can stop the, say for example, if you want to stop them for 60 seconds. So if anybody is inactive for 60 seconds, it can exit from the window. So here we have, right? So from this, to come out of this prompt, if I remain idle for 60 seconds, it will come out. Okay, so that means it will be like, it will come out of this prompt. The connection will get disconnected. So for that, you can use this command. So these 2 commands are there in the material. You can execute in the router. So I have covered almost all the commands which are given in the chapters. So all the troubleshooting commands you should know. Show running configuration command you should know. Then you should know the other troubleshooting command like show IP route, show IP route command you should know. Then you should know the show interfaces command to see all the interfaces and their details. You can use the command show interfaces. And if you want to specifically see any interface, then you can give show interfaces, and then you can give the interface name so that only that interface name you get to see. Okay, and then you can use the command show flash to know the flash memory details. You can use the command show version to see the version of the IOs which is running. And then you can use the show command IP interface brief. Very often we use this command to see whether the interface is up, whether the protocol is configured correctly. Okay. What else? Then you can use the command show protocols. This command also you can use for seeing the information about the protocols. And there's another command called show IP protocols. That when you configure any dynamic routing protocols, the protocols names you can see it. As of now, no protocol is configured, therefore you don't get any results. Okay, so practice all these troubleshooting commands. Only then you can fix the error when you get it. So I'll stop here for today. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Have you all understood? Yes. I got only 2 response. Sir, I have completed today's session.
I'll stop recording.
Yes, sir.